The following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
Here's what's cooking on an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Podcast. We're talking Major League Baseball as we begin our Major League Baseball preview with the NL and AL East. And then we're going to talk a little football news as well. That's what's cooking on today's Sports Stove Podcast.
From Belly Up Sports and the Belly Up Podcast Network, you're listening to the Sports Stove Podcast with your host, Vince Stover.
Hey, good looking, what you got cooking? How's about cooking something up to me?
Welcome into an all-new edition of the Sports Stove Podcast presented by Righteous Felon Jerky. You can go to righteousfelon.com. You're going to use the promo code BELLYUP to get 15% off your purchase, and they're introducing a brand new flavor has just dropped for Righteous Felon Jerky called now I forgot, Teriyaki Balboa, supposedly in a Philadelphia kick of teriyaki. So I'm working on getting me some of that, but like I said, go to righteousfelon.com, use the promo code BELLYUP for 15%. I'm your host, Vince Stover. I'm joined by my dad, Dale Stover. Dad, how you doing today?
Doing good. There's a lot going on in the sports world here. Football's picked back up with combine and a lot of talk. Of course, everything going on there, and we'll continue to pick up with free agency about here. March Madness, which we like, is just right around the corner. I guess next week we'll be into conference tournaments and getting ready for the tournament and the seedings, and again, it's wide open, so I think that's going to be really exciting. Baseball season is starting. Like I said, starting to work on fantasy baseball. I really enjoy the show that you and Kevin have on Sundays. That's helped me a lot, and looking forward to finishing my prep on that. But baseball season, I guess, because of fantasy baseball, helps me keep up a little bit more with spring training and just how everybody's doing and scoring there. And of course, that's going on. So, a lot in the hockey world. You've got the trade deadline now and a lot of things happening there. So, busy time of the year here in sports again.
It is busy, very busy. As a matter of fact, just like you said, we've seen some fun stuff in the spring training baseball already. With a game that got called on the pitch clock violation. We've seen some home runs, some good pitching, some different things going on. And we'll talk a lot of baseball in the next several episodes as we begin our baseball preview today. Before we get to that one, though, we do turn our attention to the NFL. And, the draft talk continues to kind of go through the roof. A lot of talk about those quarterbacks, a lot of questions being asked. Who goes number one? Then who's the second quarterback after that? We've seen drafts where there's a consensus number one, but not a consensus number two. Every team could view these guys a little differently. Anthony Richardson is a really interesting prospect out of Florida. Some people like him, some people don't. Everybody says basically the same thing about him. He's got all the potential in the world. The question is can you turn that potential into skill? I've already begun working on my mock draft, which I'll probably just end up waiting now until the week before the draft. But nonetheless, a lot of interesting things going on, including one of the supposedly top 4 picks in the NFL draft this year gets arrested or charged with reckless driving and racing in the car accident that killed his teammate and another staffer from the team, Devin Wilcock. And I forgot the girl's name. I apologize. I'm sorry. Devin Wilcock and Chandler LaCroix are the two people that were killed in the accident. And at first, we were always told it was a one-car situation. Well, now they're saying there were 2 cars. One, they were racing each other. He did not cause the wreck necessarily, but he has been charged. So that is Georgia lineman Jalen Carter, who, honestly, Dad, I had sitting up at number 3 in this draft, the first non-quarterback that was going to be taken. And now there's a little bit of question, how much will this affect him? Will it be a situation where he drops, to later in the first round? or is it a situation where something else will happen and he won't drop at all, or will he ever play football again? So there's a lot of things that we just don't know about the situation yet, and be interested to see where that goes down. Do you have any first impressions on how that's going to affect his draft status?
Well, I read a little bit about it today. What he's being charged with is a misdemeanor in the state of Georgia. So as far as him, being incarcerated or anything, probably will not be the case. I don't know. There's a little bit of time between now and the draft, so I don't know. Again, the teams, I'm sure, will do their due diligence with him about this. So I don't know that it'll affect his draft status a whole lot. Maybe it should. I don't know, but we will see.
Yeah. Of course, at the top of the list is the quarterbacks, though. Anytime that you start talking NFL draft, you're going to talk about quarterbacks. And the big question mark is, well, who goes number one and who takes them number one is the large question mark. I still believe it's either Houston or Indianapolis that moves up to number one. I still currently think Bryce Young is the quarterback that will go number one, although I think C.J. Stroud could get that as well. I think Stroud and Young go 1 and 2 in some way, shape, or form before we start getting the defensive players coming off the board. And again, you're talking about two AFC South teams that could be getting those first two quarterbacks, which could set up a really fun long-term situation in the AFC South with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville, two rookie quarterbacks coming in this year at Houston and Indianapolis. And then you got Tennessee, who is maybe another year away from Malik Willis, as the Titans seem to be sticking with Ryan Tannehill for now. We'll see if that actually gets through to the season. But we saw some veteran guys. Marcus Mariota, speaking of Titans players, gets released from the Falcons today. So that's another spot that's kind of opened up. Of course, they got Desmond Ridder that they drafted last year. You assume he's going to be the guy. Then you got Derek Carr floating around, waiting for the Aaron Rodgers news to drop so he can figure out which team he gets on. So lots of things are going to happen. We saw Leonard Fournette get cut. Kenny Golladay got cut. And, Dad, I was thinking Kenny Golladay could be a good fit in Green Bay. I know he's been horrible in New York, but he's got to have some skills still, and maybe he's a guy that you could get for cheap there in Green Bay as well. So of these movements that have been going on, anything stick out to you in the NFL this week?
Well, a lot of it, like I said, is just kind of talk at this point. So really, like I said, everybody's waiting on the Aaron Rodgers thing, and then things will probably straighten out. As I've read about that, I think that the decision will come pretty quickly early next week, if not before then. And then we'll see, what's going to happen. Now, if he comes out and says he's going to be traded, then how quick will they determine, where that's going to be? Maybe there's teams working on that already.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. But I think then, him and Derek Carr, and then we'll see about everything there. Again, it'd be interesting we get closer to the draft, how they rank the quarterbacks. How many quarterbacks will go in the first round? How many will go high in the first round? Because there are other teams that are looking for quarterbacks. They just don't have as early a pick. You got Washington, you've got Carolina, and Seattle's talking this week there. So it'll be interesting to see. And again, a lot of quarterbacks. If you get some good quarterbacks, they're going to be available in the second round and the third round. And how does that affect trades early on? Probably will. It may want to, get extra picks in the second round or whatever the case may be. The Bears, I think, are going to trade out of the first pick, but where are they going to go? And, what are they going to, what are they looking for? Where, there. So I think there'll be a lot of movement around and trades in the first round, maybe this year, and that'd be interesting.
Yeah, and of course we'll talk about this as we continue to get closer to the draft, and even free agency could shift a little bit of the thought process with Chicago. Basically, if you're not going to hold that number one pick, they're either moving to 2 or 4, possibly lower. But I wouldn't think they're going to move lower than 4. And then you sit there and go, okay, well, if we sign a defensive lineman and free agency, then maybe you got the luxury to go somewhere else. Wide receiver, I don't think there's a wide receiver good enough to be a top 4 pick. So maybe they go further down than forward because they want a wide receiver, and there's no reason to take one at 4. So there's a lot of things that are going to happen in the coming weeks when it comes to the NFL. Rodgers, I still honestly am at the point where I think I'd be surprised if he's in Green Bay. I think he's not going to play for Green Bay this year. I think he'll either retire, which I think is still a very strong possibility, or go to another team, a team like the Jets or a team like the Raiders. And I'm sure there's other teams out there too. But I don't know. The longer this goes on, the more I just think, I've seen reports where people are saying Green Bay wants him to be committed if he's going to come back. I don't think Green Bay's going to get the feeling that he's committed if he does decide he wants to come back. So I think he moves on somewhere else or retires. But we should know, hopefully, by our show next week, what's going on with Rodgers. And then we can talk about actually what has happened versus guessing what does happen. Cincinnati came out and said T. Higgins ain't going nowhere. Earlier on in the offseason, we heard maybe Higgins wanted to go somewhere else. Maybe he wanted to get paid a whole bunch of money, whatever it may be. Cincinnati's player personnel or GM, I forget his exact title, but he basically said, I'm in the business of making the Bengals better, and getting rid of T. Higgins doesn't make us better. And I believe he is correct with that as well. So, but again, a lot of it's going to come down to what happens over the next couple weeks, and Aaron Rodgers will kind of get the ball rolling, I think, with a lot of moves, even so here in the coming days. Anything else NFL related you want to get to?
No, like I said, it's just, a lot of talk at the combine. Of course, they'll start working out the next couple days, so you'll start hearing of players that are a surprise or whatever from there. But, again, one of the biggest things we talked about with the combine is you got all the GMs there together. So a lot of discussion, I'm sure, going on, a lot of posturing, a lot of talk there of moves that could be made pretty quick. So we'll see.
Yeah. You talk about the combine. It's going to be fun to watch and see where everything goes with that, right? You always get somebody who's like, all of a sudden, oh my goodness, this guy was projected 4th rounder, and now he might go number 1 overall because he ran a 4.17 or whatever it is. There's going to be somebody that stands out. There's going to be a quarterback that stands out. There's going to be a receiver that everybody's on. An offensive lineman. We've seen this in the last couple of years. An offensive lineman running a sub 5.40. He's going to be talked about more. Those kinds of things are all going to happen. Nobody's going to have a clue what's going on until we actually get there and get it over with. So we'll see how all that shakes out for sure. And it's a fun time. I enjoy the conversations around it, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. And so we just got to figure it all out. All right. So what we're going to get to here next is our Major League Baseball preview. We've done this the last couple of years and had a good time with it. We just need to see sorry, I'm trying to pull something up. I'm having a hard time talking and doing that at the same time. But we'll break down division by division, each team, and and kind of give our thoughts for the season, the win totals, and how teams are looking, new additions, and sometimes subtractions as well. And so we're going to start off that here next. But first, I want to let people know about Righteous Felon Jerky. If you want the purest jerky in the game, you got to go straight to the source. Righteous Felon has partnered with the best natural black Angus beef producers in the land to lock up supply and guarantee the best tasting, best textured, and freshest beef jerky on the market. Righteous Felon can be purchased at righteousfelon.com. Use the promo code BELLYUP for 15% off your purchase. And I personally think it's one of the best textured jerky I've ever had. Been really impressed with the texture of it all, and excited to kind of see new flavors rolling out. Like I said, the teriyaki balboa and things like that. Got to continue to try Try them and see how it all works. Thank you to Righteous Felon for supporting this program, and thank you to our listeners for supporting Righteous Felon. All right, Dad, let's start off in the AL East, and an interesting group of teams this year because, well, first of all, let's talk about this, Dad. Major League Baseball changed how they're doing the schedule. So you're going to play your division less. You're going to play at least everybody once, which knocks them down. I think it's 5 or 6 games that they won't play in the division now. And I think this helps the AL East and the NL East more than any other divisions in the league because they got tough divisions, and it could actually help them to play teams outside the division more. What are your thoughts on that kind of change going on in Major League Baseball this year?
Well, I think that's good for baseball. Like you said, I think it will help teams a little bit. You won't be, your strong division and they kind of beat each other up. There's probably a chance, maybe more teams in one division can do well there. But I think, I'm sure for Major League Baseball, and I haven't been to a Major League game in a while, but I think the fact of playing everybody and teams moving around everywhere, I think that's good. It's been years now that they've changed, with American League, National League playing each other. I mean, I remember back when, you never had any of that. And I think that's been good for baseball, good for, players all the way around. I think it helps everybody. People may have their favorite team, but you get a chance to see all the different players and get a little more exposure to the other league and the other teams. So I think the changes in baseball, I think, are good. It'll be interesting. The rule changes are very interesting. But I think that's good. I mean, you always, in every sport, you have purists that, don't want things to change. I'm not sure I like the DH everywhere. But, you get used to it, and that's what you do. And I think the rule changes will be very interesting. I think it'll be kind of fresh, and it'll be different. And because baseball, I've heard people say, and it's probably true, have gotten away from some of the base hits and base running and things like that. Even fielding as much as just, trying to throw it as fast as you can and try to hit it as far as you can. And I think maybe you see more baseball. And again, with games, if games go a little quicker, I think it'll probably help with fan interest.
It's going to be fun to watch this year. First of all, I don't know how anybody can hate on the DH. I don't know how you miss pitchers striking out, not even swinging the bat many times. That's gone. It's more competitive. It's better with the DH everywhere. Secondly, the rule changes with the pitching motion and the pitch clock and the larger bases. We're going to see a lot more base stealing this year too. So we're going to see an uptick in things that are exciting to watch. And I think overall it will be good as well. All right, so let's get into the AL East. We're going to start with the Boston Red Sox. They had a rough offseason, Dad. Xander Bogaerts heads to San Diego. They lose Rich Hill and Michael Wacha. They lose J.D. Martinez, which isn't that big of a deal. Nathan Eovaldi, another pitcher that's gone. And then other people that they've had, for short times or different things. Hosmer, Tommy Pham, those kind of guys as well. Trevor Story, who's on the roster, is injured. And I don't think he'll be back for a while. He had surgery on January the 9th. He just got put on the 60-day IL. And then they also brought in Alberto Mondesi, who had surgery on his knee back in May. Not sure when he is set to return. So they're kind of in a rough spot this year. They got this first-round draft pick in 2018, Tristan Casas. I need to apologize ahead of time. I'm going to mispronounce names. Just heads up on that for everybody listening. Don't get too frustrated. I apologize for it. But this Tristan Casas guy is supposed to be the next thing, right? He's supposed to be really big and have himself a great year. He's a lefty, first baseman, and they're expecting big things out of him up in the league. Rafael Devers is still there. He's one of the only guys that's kind of left over. They bring in Justin Turner. They also purchased from Japan Masataka Yoshida. They got Alex Verdugo, Kiki Hernandez, Adam Duvall, Reese McGuire is slotted in as the starting catcher, Christian Arroyo there as well. It's just a lineup that doesn't scare people, Dad. In the past, The Red Sox have been good, and they've been relatively good. This year, the expectation is a lot lower for Boston. And then pitching, Chris Sale, can he stay healthy is the big question. Their 4 of their 5 pitchers in the rotation are over 30. There's a almost 34-year-old. Chris Sale will be 34 here by the start of the season, or very soon within the season. Corey Kluber is almost 37. Nick Pivetta is right at 30. James Paxton at 34. And then Garrett Whitlock, currently slotted as the number 5 starter. He's 26, so he's the young gun in the rotation. They do have Kenley Jansen locked up in the bullpen, which could help him, but I'm not sure how many save opportunities he's going to get. Dad, this Boston team is just not the threat that we've come to expect from Boston.
No, that's true. And like I said, they've had a rough offseason. So going into the season, it does not look like Boston is going to, like you said, will not be the team that normally, the Red Sox the Red Sox are playing and their rivalries with some teams there. It's going to be hard probably for Boston to compete, especially with some of the teams in their division.
Yeah, Boston is set at 77.5 wins. Now, again, where they don't have to play their division as much this year, that's going to help a team like Boston. 77.5 is kind of a low number, but at the end of the day, it's probably a number I'm going to go under on this year because I'm not sure what I'm seeing. I mean, maybe they make a trade during the year, whatever, but I'm not seeing anything great coming from this team personally. So I'm going to go under 77.5 for Boston. How about you?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I go under with them also.
Yeah, just, man, if I'm a Boston fan, I'm definitely not too excited about what I'm seeing here this year. Let's go to Baltimore next. This is a team I really like this year, Dad. Baltimore has got a lot of young guys. They sold at the trade deadline this past year, and they have one of the best young groups coming up in the league. They didn't really lose anybody in the offseason that matters. So that's kind of nice. But what do they have in their lineup? Cedric Mullins, who's a really good baseball player. Adley Rutschman, who's one of the best young catchers in the league. Gunnar Henderson, a really good third baseman for Baltimore. He's a second-round pick from 2019. Rutschman was their first-round pick in 2019. They also got a guy named Kyle Stowers, who was a 2019 draft pick as well. He should be the main designated hitter, at least the left-handed designated hitter this season. Anthony Santander, he's been good and not great all at the same time at different times. Same with Ryan Mountcastle. Austin Hayes is going to field left field, Adam Frazier in second base, and Jorge Mateo at shortstop. It's an interesting team in the field. I love Mullins, Richmond, and Henderson. All the other guys, I think they can have good years. The question is, will they? For the pitching staff, they bring in Kyle Gibson from Philadelphia. They traded for Cole Irvin from Oakland. They got Kyle Bradish, Dean Kramer, and Grayson Rodriguez. I really like Cole Irvin in Baltimore. Getting out of Oakland is a good thing for him. So he's got a lot of potential, I think, here in Baltimore. And then Felix Bautista is the closer, and he had a really good year last year as well. And he's pretty young, and really the staff is relatively young as well. Baltimore is I think, going to be a fun team to watch this year, Dad. I think they've got potential to make a run for a wild card spot.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think they are. I know last year in fantasy, I picked up a lot of their younger guys from time to time at the end of the year. So I knew they had a lot of good young players. They had people that were doing well. And like I said, they've kept the bulk of people together. And they were definitely on the rise some last year. And I think they could definitely chance to get into playoffs this year.
Yeah, to me, they're going to be one of the fun teams to watch. We'll talk about them as we go on throughout our preview. But to me, Baltimore and Chicago White Sox are another team to watch out for this year in the American League. But I'm impressed with what Baltimore has put together throughout basically holding on to their young guys. Their projected over-under is 76.5. I'm going to go over on that one. I think they're going to be a tough team, and I think they can hit 80 this year.
Yeah, I would go over on that too. I think they'll be better than Boston, and I think they could be a lot better than that. So we'll see. I think they could go over 80, like you said.
All right, a lot better, he says. We'll see how that one shakes out. Let's head up to New York and the Yankees. Obviously, they're towards the top of the division every year, it seems like. And you want to talk about a powerful lineup? Well, then you can look at the New York Yankees. Projected lineup according to Fangraphs: Gleyber Torres, Aaron Judge, Anthony Rizzo, Giancarlo Stanton, Josh Donaldson, Harrison Bader, Aaron Hicks, Jose Trevino, and Oswald Peraza. Peraza's the guy you got to watch out. He's the young gun coming in at shortstop and should be a fun guy to watch. And then you're talking about Isaiah Falefa and DJ LeMahieu on the bench, although LeMahieu might see some time up at third base as well. And then Oswaldo Cabrera is an interesting young guy as well. So the Yankees have a good mixture of young and old coming into this season on the offensive side of things. Then you look at the rotation. Garrett Cole, of course, is one of the more dominant pitchers in the league. Carlos Rodon comes over from San Francisco. Then Luis Severino, Nestor Cortez, and Domingo Germán. And I got to tell you, I don't love Germán. I don't love Cortez. I don't love Severino. But Rodon and Cole are obviously really good pitchers. And for five guys, it's not a bad rotation. Better than last year's, I think. Even with a lot of these guys being the same, they just didn't have a great year last year. Clay Holmes is slotted in currently as the closer, along with other guys, of course, in the bullpen as well. To me, Dad, the Yankees look like they should be towards the top, if not on the top of the ALS East this year. What are your thoughts on the Yankees?
Yes, I mean, it looks like they're very strong lineup. Depending on injuries, they should be one of the top teams in the American League, no doubt about it. Whether they're the dominant team, I don't know, but I think the Yankees should be a good team and what you expect the Yankees to be.
Yeah, and again, I keep saying it, but you go back to the fact that they don't have to play the division as much. Helps them a lot when you get to play the Tigers, the Twins, the White Sox, the Royals, the Guardians, the A's. Guaranteed to play those guys along with the NL teams as well that are not great. So when you look at that, you got to figure out that they're going to be pretty good again this year. The Yankees over-under is set at 95.5. I think they're good enough to go over that. If I was a betting man, and I'm not, I probably would stay away from this one. I think 95 to 97 seems to make the most sense. So I'd go over 95.5 for the Yankees.
Yeah, I'll go over, but like you said, it's close. It's right there. But probably it's safe to say over just a little bit.
Next up is Tampa. Tampa's one of those teams that's always there, and I always doubt them, and yet I'm always wrong. So maybe I'm not going to doubt them this year. That's not true. I probably will as well. They lose Ryan Yarbrough, Corey Kluber from the rotation from last season. Kevin Kiermaier's gone to Toronto. David Peralta, give or take, whatever. Not too big of a loss, in my opinion. You look at their lineup, their projected lineup according to Fangraphs. Yandy Diaz, he's one of those guys that's been inconsistent along the way, but Wander Franco is a guy I absolutely love at shortstop. Randy Arozarena, Brandon Lowe at second base, Harold Ramirez, Manuel Margot, Isaac Paredes, Christian Betancourt, and Jose Siri in here as well. This is a team that, again, they're not super exciting, but they got some fun pieces to them. And then the pitching staff, Shane McClanahan is a really, really good pitcher. Drew Rasmussen, Zach Eflin comes over from Philadelphia, which should strengthen this rotation. But then Jeffrey Springs and Yanni Carrinos, I'm not sure that either of those guys get me too excited. And you can never trust a closer from Tampa because they don't have one. They rotate guys through a lot down there in the bullpen as well. So like I said, I mean, you give me Wander Franco, I'm excited about it. Everybody else, I just kind of go, eh. But history shows that Tampa's going to be there at the end.
Yes, again, as I was reading, Tampa didn't add a lot from what I understand in the offseason. And usually, you don't just stay the same. You either got to improve a little bit. They do have some good players, and they have been very competitive. Probably a little surprising the last couple of years, but I don't know where they'll fit this year. We'll see.
Yeah, I mean, they've got two pitchers that are on the currently injured. They've got Shane Baz and Tyler Glasnow. I think Glasnow will be okay for the season from everything I understand. He has a strained oblique. But Shane Baz is coming off of the Tommy John surgery back in September. Be interested to see kind of what he looks like and can he recover from that quickly. He's young, so you'd like to think maybe he can get a quicker recovery. Tampa Bay, is at 88.5 wins. I'm going to go under because that's what I do with Tampa. So I'll go under 88.5.
Again, I think they're going to drop just a little bit. So, yes, I'll go under 88.5 also.
All right, and that brings us to Toronto. This is the team that should compete for number one in the division with the Yankees. They have a loaded lineup. They've got a decent rotation as well. In the lineup, George Springer, Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero, Alejandro Kirk, Dalton Varsho, Matt Chapman, Brandon Belt, Whit Merrifield, Kevin Kiermaier, all on the team. Then you've got guys like Kevin Biggio, Danny Jansen coming off the bench more than likely. That's a stacked offensive lineup. Adding Dalton Varsho in this offseason, Brandon Belt adds a left-handed bat, and Kevin Kiermaier adds a left-handed bat. All three of those guys left-handed, brought in the offseason. Kiermaier could be a really fun addition to this team as well. He's kind of flown under the radar because he's been in Tampa. Brandon Belt's aging. I'm not sure if he holds that DH position over Danny Jansen. And again, they've got to find some time for Kevin Biggio as well. So Biggio, as well. So we'll see what they do with that. In the rotation, Alex Manoah, Kevin Gausman, Jose Barrios, Chris Bassett coming over from the Mets, and then Yusei Kikuchi comes in as well. Don't love their bullpen, but, Dad, I like their rotation as a whole. I think Toronto takes the division this year. I think they're good enough, and I love their offseason moves. They should compete with New York.
Yes, I would agree. I think they can win the division. Again, they went out and got the players. They've got a very stacked lineup. They've been good. This would be the year for them to perform, no doubt about it. And I think they probably will.
Their over-unders at 92.5. Obviously, if I think they can beat out the Yankees, and the Yankees are at 95.5, I'm going to go over with Toronto as well. And like you said, I just think this has to be the year they finally get it done.
Yes, yeah, I would go over also, and I would agree with that.
All right, so the way I have the East breaking down is I go Toronto, New York, Tampa, Baltimore, and Boston in last place is the way I see it shaking out. How about you?
As I look at this, I'm just going to go with kind of my gut on this, but I'll go with Toronto, the Yankees, then Baltimore, then Tampa, then Boston at the end. I think Baltimore can make a move here, and Tampa may slip just a little bit.
All right. Well, we'll hold you to it as the season goes on. Let's move over to the NL East, and this was a division that underperformed in so many ways, but the Braves ended up let's see here, 101-61, tied with the Mets at the end of the year. Phillies in third, but they did okay after that. And then the Marlins and the Nationals all in there as well. Let's look at Atlanta first. Atlanta lost a fair amount of people this year. Dansby Swanson, gone. Kenley Jansen, gone. Adam Duvall, gone. Robbie Grossman, gone, which could be a little bit of an interesting effect for them as well. But they are still the Atlanta Braves, and they got a good team mixture, again, of young people, actually relatively young offensive lineup. Ronald Acuna Jr., Matt Olson, Austin Riley. They bring in Sean Murphy as catcher, Michael Harris coming off a great rookie season at center field, Ozzie Albies returning from injury, Marcelo Zuna, I don't like him, Eddie Rosario, and then the young guy, Vaughn Grissom. They got, between Michael Harris and Vaughn Grissom, really young guys that are going to be playing a lot of time for them in Atlanta this year. And then you've got Travis D'Arnaud's still there. Orlando Arcia is still there as well to provide some depth for the team. And then the pitchers, Max Fried, Kyle Wright, Charlie Morton, who I hate, Spencer Strider, who was phenomenal last year, and Ian Anderson. So they got 5 guys that can go. They bring in Raisel Iglesias as a closer option for him in the bullpen. And, Dad, I just think this Atlanta Braves team is really tough again this year. And I love what they've done. Most of their offensive lineup is under 30 years old. So they should be good for a while, right?
Yes, like I said, they're younger, but they look like just a very strong team. I mean, they've done well the last couple of years. They have a lot of the main, people there. A couple of their guys, like you said, Albies and Acuna, should come back and be strong, maybe like they were a couple of years ago. And it looks like Atlanta will be a very, very tough team.
It's interesting. This team is built in a variety of ways, actually really balanced ways. 13 players on their 40-man roster are from the organization drafted by Atlanta. 12 are free agent signings. 12 are trade acquires, and 1 waiver wire on the list. They got currently 39 guys on the list, on the 40-man roster, excuse me. So they've kind of built this in unique ways. Dansby Swanson gone. He was there for, he was drafted there, was an important piece. Yeah. But then we saw last year Freddie Freeman leave as well. So, and they made it work with Matt Olson. Matt Olson is not Freddie Freeman, but they made it work with him as well. And I love what Atlanta continues to do here in the NL East. Their win total, Dad, is at 95.5. Like I said, they got 101 wins last year. I think they get helped by getting to play their division less. So I'm going to go over again, 95.5.
I would agree with that, 95.5. I believe they can go over that at least a little bit.
At least a little bit. I like that. All right, let's see here. Next up is Miami. The Marlins, they made some interesting moves this offseason, although I don't think they're going to be that good. They bring in Luis Arraez as they traded Pablo Lopez for him. They bring in Gene Segura as well to kind of bolster their infield with those 2 guys. Jazz Chisholm will move to center field. They still have Jorge Soler, Garrett Cooper, Avisal Garcia, Joey Wendell, the only left-handed newbie, I suppose. Brian De La Cruz, a lot of people really like him in the outfield. Jacob Stallings listed as the starting catcher as well. The pitching staff is led by Sandy Alcantara. They bring in Johnny Cueto. They got Jesus Luzardo, Edward Cabrera, and Trevor Rogers. It's actually a really good pitching setup. I mean, they lost Pablo Lopez. They replaced him basically with Johnny Cueto. It's a pretty good 5 there. They also bring in A.J. Puck in the offseason to be in the bullpen. I mean, I look at this division, Dad, and I think, well, I've got the Mets, I've got the Phillies, and I've got the Braves. I don't think the Marlins can squeak into that top 3, even though they made some decent moves this year. They're coming off of a season where they won 69 games. I think they'll do better than that, but I don't know, Dad. I don't think there's enough on this team to be a legit contender.
No, I don't know that they'll compete with the top 3, but like you said, I think this is a team that could benefit from the new schedule, not having to play the division teams as much. And they do have some good young talent. I think they'll be kind of a fun team to keep an eye on. And I know from the fantasy standpoint, it's the kind of team you want to watch and see who emerges having a good season there.
Yeah, I don't love Marlins players on my fantasy team. I like the pitchers okay. The other guys scare me off a little bit. I think Jazz Chisholm is so overrated, it's not even funny. But the Marlins win total is at 74.5. Again, they had 69 wins last year. That would be at least a 5-game improvement. Where do you sit with the Marlins win total?
Again, I don't know if they'll compete with the top teams, but I would go over 74.5. I think they can be improved. Maybe it'll just be a couple 77 or whatever, but I'll go over with them.
I think I'm going to go under with this team. But I think 74. I mean, I think they're going to improve from 69. How much are they going to improve is the question. So I'm going to go under with Miami and take my shots with that one. Let's go to the New York Mets. They go out and get themselves a pitcher this year. They also re-signed Brandon Nimmo and Edwin Diaz. They lose Chris Bassett, though, to free agency. They lose Jacob deGrom to free agency as well this year, amongst other players, too. Let's look at their offense first, though. Brandon Nimmo, Sterling Marte, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso. These are all really good baseball players. Jeff McNeil, Daniel Vogelbach, Mark Canha, Eduardo Escobar, and Omar Narvaez. I think it kind of drops off after the top four in this lineup. I love Omar Narvaez, by the way, former Brewers catcher, but he's not going to give you a lot offensively at the very least. Then pitching, Justin Verlander comes in from Houston. They return Max Scherzer. They go out and get Cody Senga from Japan. Carlos Carrasco and Jose Quintana are there as well. And again, their bullpen's pretty solid. So this is a team that I look at as a hit or miss team. The New York Mets, I have questions, lots and lots of questions about the New York Mets. Old pitchers. Will they last the season? Of course, Jacob deGrom never did. But I don't know. Is bringing in a guy that is old like Justin Verlander, he's 40 years old, is that the answer? What do you think about the Mets this year?
Well, I think the key will be their pitching. Like I said, if these guys hold up and they end up being, there, then they're going to be a very tough team. They do have some talent, but like you said, there was a little bit of drop off. So I think there's a little bit of question mark with the Mets as far as, are they going to be dominant, and even where are they going to end up in the division?
Yeah, I mean, they had 101 wins last year. Their win total right now is 95.5. I see them more closer to 90 games. So I'm going to go under 95.5 with the Mets. How about you?
Yeah, I'll go under also. I think they'll be under 95. They'll drop off a little bit there. So I would go under.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I go under with the Mets is because I'm big on Philadelphia this year. And I don't know how you can't be big on Philadelphia this year, as they come into this season fully stocked and fully loaded. They lose some guys. Noah Syndergaard, Kyle Gibson from last year's team, both gone. Zach Eflin, gone. David Robertson, gone. Gone. Then, of course, Gene Segura, who's been around for a while now in Philadelphia, he's gone as well. But they bring in Trey Turner, who's a phenomenal baseball player. They return Schwarber, Hoskins, Realmuto, Nick Castellanos, who had a bad year last year. I think we'll have a bounce back year this year. They expected Derek Hall to hold the majority of their DH spot. Alec Bohm, we still expecting more from him at third base. Bryson Scott at second base. Brandon Marsh, that came over last year in the trade from Los Angeles, at center field. This is a really, really good lineup, especially if guys like Alec Bohm can step up and play up to their potential there. And then you look at the pitching staff. Aaron Nola, very good. Zach Wheeler, very good. Taijuan Walker, an interesting addition from the Mets. He's good. Ranger Suarez, okay, and Bailey Falter there as well. And then they've got a bullpen full of guys with closing experience. We're not sure which one will be the closer. Craig Kimbrell, Gregory Soto. They got Sir Anthony Dominguez they like in that spot, and Jose Alvarado, excuse me. So they got guys, their bullpen is tough. Their starting pitching, I like their top two guys, and their offense I like a lot too. So I think at the end of the day, Philadelphia is really good this season, but there are a couple question marks still on this team. What do you think about Philadelphia?
I would agree with your first comment. I don't know how you could not be positive on the Phillies, the way they finished. And again, they've added some pieces. They've kept some of the really good pieces, and it looks like they can be very strong with pitching. They may even have some young guys that are not in the starting lineup right now that may challenge, from what I understand, going forward. So, and they do have offensive talent, and I think the Phillies, should be able to compete all year.
Yeah, and you got to remember Bryce Harper's injured. He had Tommy John surgery back in November. So at some point, he'll return as well to add to it. You talked about the prospects and things, people that could come up. As a Christopher Sanchez, Michael Plasmeyer, and James MacArthur, all potentially guys that could make an appearance this year. Andrew Painter, possibly, probably not, but possibly as well. Actually, Andrew Painter might be the one you see first, I guess, out of that group as well. But I love what they did this year. Trey Turner is such a great baseball player. You add a guy like that, that's definitely a bump over Gene Segura. Their win total's at 88.5. Last year, they only won 87, but I think they're way better than that. I'm going to go over 88.5. To me, that's an easy over.
Yes, I would agree. I think they definitely should be way over that.
Yeah, I mean, I think Philadelphia is pushing for the East title. Atlanta might be good enough to hold them off. So I probably shake it out Atlanta, Philadelphia. Oh, we haven't covered all the teams yet. I apologize. I mean, do we need to talk about Washington? Let's talk about the Nationals real quick. I'm sorry to any of Nationals fans who were tuning into the show tonight. They lose some guys. Cesar Hernandez gone. That's probably the biggest loss they had this year. I mean, their offensive lineup is Lane Thomas, Corey Dickerson, Joey Meneses, Yeimer Candelario, Dominic Smith is there, Keibert Ruiz, C.J. Abrams, Victor Robles, and Luis Garcia. None of those guys excite me. Not a single one of those guys excite me. I might find one or two of them eventually on my fantasy team, but not because they excite me. How about this for their pitching rotation? Josiah Gray. Nope, not excited. Patrick Corbin. What? No, he's been horrible for 3 years now. Trevor Williams. No, I'm out. Cade Cavalli. Not big on him. Mackenzie Gore. Maybe, but no, not really. I hate this Washington team, Dad. Is there anything about this Washington team that makes you go, hey, there's hope for these guys?
No, looking at it before the year, you wouldn't say that. We'll see how they do. There's no expectations. So, obviously they'll need to be trying a lot of things, and we'll see what happens. But no, just looking at them, there's not a lot of hope at this point.
For win totals, they're the second lowest win total. Only Oakland is below them. They won 55 games last year. They are currently listed at 60.5. Sign me up for the under 60.5 for Washington. How about you?
I'll go over. Probably not very much, but I think again, when you have a team like that, no expectations, they can try a lot of things, they can do a lot of things, and they're surprised. So they should win 60 games. We'll take a shot at it. 60.5.
Oof. Okay. Well, that's fine. I got some young guys. C.J. Abrams at shortstop is an interesting prospect. Or young guy, he comes over from San Diego in a trade. Keibert Ruiz, he's still young, so maybe he reaches his potential. But there's just nothing here. I don't get it. Nothing here in Washington to get too excited about. In my opinion. So I have it breaking down Atlanta, Philadelphia, the Mets, Miami, and Washington. How does yours break down?
I'll go with Philadelphia and then Atlanta, then the Mets, then Miami, then Washington. But I think it's very close there at the top, and we'll just see how this, if the Mets turn out not to be real good, then we'll see. This division may not be the dominant one in the NL. We'll see.
We will see. We were talking about the easy over for Philadelphia. My man Kevin Wilson agrees. Easy over. Look for 95 wins for Philadelphia, which is a great time to mention. And Dad, you mentioned it earlier in the program, but the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show, live every Sunday at 8 p.m. Kevin Wilson joins me for that. He's the senior fantasy baseball writer at bellyupfantasysports.com. And then we also have a guest on each week. We talk all things fantasy baseball. And Dad, we're inching ever so close to our fantasy baseball draft. Last year, I ended up second place in the league behind Dan D'Amico and right above Kevin Wilson. I'd always like to make sure Kevin remembers that. But we have a good time with that. And then, of course, Dad, me and you are in another league where we've got a keeper league and have enjoyed that for many, many years now. But I mean, fantasy baseball's here, regular baseball's here. It's exciting to see what's going on You're a Giants fan, and I know we'll talk about the Giants in a couple weeks, but what's the hope around San Francisco right now?
I think they'll be better than people think. Now, again, you've got San Diego, who's really stacked. You got the Dodgers, who are always good. But like you said, this idea of not having to play the division teams as much, as you read different things about the Giants, it's not necessarily, doom and gloom. So we'll see. They did pick up some guys. They didn't get the big name guys they wanted to get, obviously, with Judge there. But
yeah.
I think the Giants have always tended the last few years to surprise a little bit. And I think they'll stay in the hunt. We'll see.
Yeah, they had Carlos Correa for a day or two, and then obviously that fell through with the physical stuff. So they bring in Mitch Haniger and Michael Conforto in the outfield to try to boost, I guess, what's going on there in San Francisco. They lose Carlos Rodon, but they pick up Sean Manaea and Ross Stripling. They've got a decent rotation of pitchers too. Again, we'll talk about them in a couple weeks, but an interesting team there. And then I'm a Milwaukee fan, and I like overall what Milwaukee's done. What I hate that Milwaukee did this year was the situation with Corbin Burns. They argued over money and went to arbitration. They won in arbitration, and Corbin Burns came out of that just frustrated. And you hate to see that. He's an ace pitcher, and they need him to be solid this year. We'll wait and see kind of what happens with them. And but they got some young guys too, outfielders, and one of their top prospects in Bryce Terang should be coming up and playing at second base this year as well. So a lot of fun things there. I love baseball season. I'm excited that we're almost there. But obviously college basketball is the big news right now as conference tournaments overall will be starting soon. EKU's already been in theirs. They won a game on Tuesday night. They play at Liberty on Thursday night. It will be a tough battle for A.W. Hamilton and the Colonels. But we'll continue to watch what goes on there. And it won't be long, Dad. We'll be doing a tournament show. And when we do the tournament show, their playing games will already be done. So we'll know the 64, and we'll have a fun time talking brackets and things like that here. I think that's 2 weeks away, if I remember correctly. So we'll be talking about all that very shortly as well. Dad, you want your 30 seconds of hockey talk?
Again, interesting news with the Predators this week. A little hockey news, Barry Trotz coming back. Anybody in there in the Middle Tennessee area, very excited about that. We'll see if he can make the transition from coaching to being a GM. That was big news there in the Predators. And again, we'll just see how the hockey playoffs are, shape up here near the end.
Yeah, I haven't paid much attention at all to hockey this year, but I have seen the Predators making lots of moves and saw the Barry Trotz news. And as a guy who was around when the Predators came to Nashville, Barry Trotz is definitely a respected individual. And so is David Poyle, who's retiring. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues to break out and how it all works. All right, anything else you want to cover before we leave?
Nope. Like I said, we've got a lot coming up, especially with basketball and keeping up on getting ready for baseball season. So, and again, there's going to be football news breaking all the time. So a lot we can keep up on. Should be a lot of surprises by next week.
I think there will be. All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to tonight's edition of the Sports Stove podcast. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Sports Stove. Tune in Sunday night for the Sports Stove Fantasy Baseball Show. We plan to drop in a local hour this week as well if we can get the interviews in with all the basketball that's being played. But just stay tuned. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts to the Sports Stove podcast. Until next time, we'll see you around the Sports Stove.